Oh, trying to move this thing. It doesn't want to cooperate with me. There we go. That's all I needed to do. Somebody already liked it.
Cool.
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, nothing's cooperating with me today. Must be Mercury. I'm here and alive, not just looking. Carla says, "Hi, Schieffer and Ian. How was your equinox?" It was relatively uneventful, and it was Bunny Quinn's birthday, so we
Yep.
shouted happy birthday at him several times. Grateful Owl says, "Hi, Schieffer and Ian." Hi, Grateful Owl.
Hello.
Jana says, "Hi, guys." Hi, Jana. Hope everything is well in your part of the planet. Ah, yay, we're back, and we're still here. Awesome. Ian is typing, sending out a message of greeting.
Yeah.
Teresa says, "Did Quinn jump for joy when you shouted?" No. We didn't yell very loudly, but he has been having fun rearranging the living room. I gave him a box and then a cardboard tube. So he has been picking them up and moving them around. He created a nice little section for him to sort of get behind, and then this morning he decided to change that around and picked up the box and moved it somewhere else.
Pretty cute though. He moves things around to make these nice little barriers to get behind where he decides he wants to park for a while.
Yep. And then he changes his mind. And right now he's playing with a piece of with a newspaper, trying to figure out how to pick it up and drag it to place. So Aaron says, "Hello, hi, Aaron." Carlos says, "Happy birthday to your bunny." Yes. And so we're hoping that means he is now full grown. And, he's like 1 year old. And that's usually means that they're full grown. So D Chowd Hurry says, "Hi, Shifra and Ian. Love your blue top, Shifra. Gorgeous. Thank you. I made this. This is one of my shawls. And I'm making a bunch more. After I got ripped off by the fake Joanne websites, I went to the real Joann's and bought a bunch of stuff, and I'm making some for everybody I know. Well, not everybody, but a lot of them. So I'm crocheting because I really was looking forward to that, and then I was disappointed to find out that I'd been scammed and it was a fraud, and I had to cancel my card and do all that other stuff, to protect myself, etc. So yeah, boy, I tell you, they're everywhere. But yes, and I've had some interesting dreams this week. Giano says, "I had a rough week, a lot of self analysis about how I handled that guy who upset me so much that we spoke about last week. You guys done all right? Week go okay?" Yeah, mostly. I mean, we had a lot of stuff to deal with, you know, information to try and find and that kind of thing. But yeah, a few little health weirdities, but nothing we're not unfamiliar with, I guess. Common kinds of stuff
Yeah,
we
I,
deal with.
I know what that's like though, Jono. I have plenty of my own things that I have uh, questions, at least question seriously some of my reactions to things at times. It's a tough nut to figure out how to navigate properly and still feel like you're being a spiritual person at the same time when somebody's being really obnoxious. You
How
know.
to have good boundaries and not take it too personally, knowing that they're doing a lot of projecting on their part. And, it's not a matter of rising above it, but protecting yourself and, uh, you know, not acting out in a way that's going to have a flashback on you. Like spillage, psychic, karmic, whatever, emotional spillage. It's tricky. It's tricky to figure it out, and it's like we make mistakes, and then if we learn from them and grow and try to do better next time, that's about all we can. I mean, that's a lot right there. a lot of people will have those reactions and never question what they're doing at all and never even do any kind of self-analysis. So that's a huge step in and of itself, thinking about it and taking stock.
Personally, I try to rise above it myself.
Yeah, but you do what you have to do. Teresa says those scammers are always at the ready for the latest. Pinky heard your voice and now she's here. Hi, Pinky. Carlos says, I'm sorry you had to deal with scammers. Facebook is full of them. There's a writer from The Daily Show who does stand up. People are buying up his tickets and selling them for $400 and above. Oh. Jono says, we're not going to talk about He Who Must Not Be Named and his buddy, but wow, stuff is crazy, wild there by you right now. Yes, I know. And so, speaking of which, the dream that I had this week was absolutely incredible. I was in this desert, like there was nothing around. It was just this terrible place. It was like the Sahara. It was like lifeless and harsh and everything else. And I discovered what I called a pocket world in the desert. And I entered into this pocket world, and it was sort of like an oasis in the middle of this desert. But that's what it was called. It was called a pocket world. And I was very excited that they were real. And so every dream I had after that, I told every other person in every dream that I discovered that pocket worlds exist. So it really made me think about it. And one of the things I started focusing on since our last live session was since I have the amethyst that began the entire crystal web network, because I started it here and it's in my bedroom. I thought it would be a good idea with all the stress and everything that I'm experiencing around me and on me, etc., and in me, to try and avail myself of that energy of joy, peace, and tranquility, because I certainly could use some. And so I really focused on activating and then being inside of the amethyst crystal web when I went to sleep. And I've realized that that's actually the pocket world that I discovered in my dream, and that we created this, started this 7 years ago. And I think maybe this is one of the purposes for it, is to help us survive whatever it is that's happening and what's coming, to be able to get inside of that feeling and to draw on the joy, peace, and tranquility of the entire network. Um, and I certainly have had a much calmer and less stressful week on a lot of different levels because of it. And of course, I'm wearing some of the amethysts that I have charged up, because I charge up my jewelry so I can wear that when I'm there. And and then put it on me to help keep me in that energetic flow. So, all of you that are a part of the Amethyst Crystal Web Project, try it out, see if it helps. And for everyone who's joining, the more people we have charging this the web up every full moon, the stronger it'll become, the more we can help ourselves and others, regardless of what's going on around us. So it was certainly a very interesting experience, and I really liked it a lot. Carla says, I think we're in a pocket world of sorts. Gabrielle says, hey everyone. Hi, Gabrielle. Carla says, that's a lovely pocket world, way better than the upside down. Yeah. And Carla says, hey, angel girl. Yeah, I mean, why not? It's there for anyone who wants to draw on it. That was the whole point of it in the first place. And since we know it exists, and I know I certainly could use it, the love, peace, and tranquility energy as I go through my chaotic days and whatever, why not use it for ourselves as well, as hope other people find it and use it for themselves. It's like we need to do something to keep our community from devolving into stress and despair. So I think this might be a good survival tactic. But hey, so there you go. I was very happy, and I've been focusing on it every night when I go to sleep, as well as during the day when I'm wearing the amethyst jewelry and stuff like that, to just kind of stay in the right mindset, energetically speaking. Teresa says, I'm looking forward to joining a Zoom chat on the full moon to take part in the Amethyst Web project with others. Yeah, I got to figure out how I'm going to set that up in my room. Ian and I are going to talk about options and see what comes up. But yes, definitely. And I think I'm going to do another video about it and about how it works and what our focus is and so forth, because it seems like the more people that are involved in it, the better it is for everyone to be on as much of the same page as possible when we're charging it up. So why not? It's an opportunity to learn more. So yeah. So yeah, we're gonna do that. It's yeah, life is certainly an interesting experience, I have to say. Ah, so that's my news. Now, Carla says, looking forward to using my wand this full moon. It's really coming along, and even the hubs is getting inspired to make a walking stick. Awesome. I love the pictures you sent me. Thank you, Carla. Jana says, you guys sometimes think about the meme that there are multiple dimensions, and we accidentally fell into the stupidest timeline possible. Yeah, I have. Good work on the Amethyst project. You guys are good people. Thank you. Teresa says, has your weather settled down there? Yeah, we have a little bit of rain last night. It's supposed to clear up for at least a few days. I'm not sure for how long we're going to have good weather, but at the moment, uh, I guess floodwaters are receding, and working on landslides, etc., I'm sure is an ongoing thing for a while. Some roads will still be closed while they're figuring that out. Jen says, hello everyone, blessed be, sending you all love, strength, and light. Thank you, Jen. Welcome. Carla says, thank you, Siofra. Your encouragement sure is appreciated. And it's one of the things I love about wands. They're so individual. They're so, each one is just so unique and wonderful in its own right. It's just lovely. And getting connected to one is just so much fun. Gabrielle says, hey, Carla. Love and fairies and birds. Carla says, our weather was crazy. Did you have tornadoes and stuff where you are? Dia says, I was curious about which crystals you and Ian are most drawn to and why. A lot of them, obviously amethyst. Quite clearly for me, since I'm wearing amethyst all over. Amethysts have always been a favorite stone of mine, and the reason for that is because of its color, its connection to the acacia, and that's why we chose it for the crystal web, to connect around the planet and that kind of thing. But I really like selenite, and I have a lot of different stones. Each one has its own purpose. I use tiger eye a lot for, and labradorite for reflecting, protection kind of stuff. Um, each one is different, unique, has its own purpose. I have 5 stones that I use in my bath, one for each element. And so those stones stay in my bathroom, and I charge up the stones and cast the circle in each element before I take my bath. Um, so every bath I take is like cleansing not just my physical body but energetic body, etc. at the same time, so I can clear stuff out and not carry stuff with me. So yeah, I mean, do you have an absolute favorite?
I don't really have any favorites. It all depends on what I'm doing. If I had to pick one overall, I guess it'd probably be amethyst because of the akashic aspects, and you can do so much with just the akashic aspect. But really depends on what I'm doing. If I'm looking for something for like earthiness or the earth element or something, I like petrified wood, but also fine. Obsidian is dark and heavy, but that can be Saturnian. So really, I don't have one overall, like I say, other than maybe the amethyst, because they're all equally interesting for different purposes.
Carla says we had an F1 touchdown in our county last week. Ooh, Gabrielle says, unity and good vibes. Carla says, Siofra, I've never had a branch tell me what it wanted like that one did. I know it's because of your project. I know it. Well, awesome. Jono says, I don't see your tiger's eye right now. That's because I'm wearing all amethysts. And I'm wrapping myself in joy, peace, and tranquility so I don't feel the need for protection and reflecting at the moment, I guess. Old Crone's Corner says, good afternoon, Miss Siofra. Wonderful to see you. Hi. Teresa says, I'm getting interested in moldavite. I hear it's powerful for manifesting. Do you have experience with it? No, it is a meteorite stone. There's lots of different kinds. It's one that has a gem-like quality and it can be very expensive, and there's a lot of fakes out there, but I have some meteorite that I use for different reasons. Um, but I don't have a moldavite. I grew up with all the basics, like rose quartz and clear quartz and uh, smoky quartz and amethyst and citrine and you know um, the ones that aren't super expensive, hematite, uh, obsidian, tiger's eye, labradorite. I mean, lapis. I mean, there's just so many wonderful stones out there, and stones are only as powerful as the user and what you know how to do with them, really. They all have unique qualities, but it's also dependent upon the user and the person that charges them up and interacts with them. Jono says, thumbs up. Carlos says, and for that tree to be older than the town and all the weirdness with these deliverance ministries and it being connected to the moon, synchronicities so loud I need earplugs. Yeah, it's nice to have something that is older than the community that you live in. They're more connected to the land itself directly. So it could be, giving you much more access to like the actual spirit of the area. I think that's awesome. Old Crone says, I love my meteorite, and personally it works so well for me and was way less in cost. Yeah, that's true. Teresa says, my favorites are clear quartz and Apache tears, but do love most crystals. Yeah, I find Apache tears are very useful for helping heal the land and recognizing land guardians. It seems to have some kind of a universal acceptance with the land guardians that I've encountered as like remembrance of the things that happened on the place previously, like the massacres of the native people and so forth, and it seems to help develop a more conscious relationship with the guardians that were here before that happened. So I use them for that. Old Crone says, Miss Teresa, I love Apache tears. They are wonderful for sorrow in the land. Exactly, just what I said. Jen says, oh, I love the pocket world. How do we access and enter it? Through the amethyst crystal web. That is the pocket world, apparently, that we've created. So you can watch the video on how to do it. You can participate in it. You can charge up your own amethysts. You can connect your altar and your amethysts to the web and start to get that energy coming into your space. If you haven't done that already, that would be what I would recommend. And if you're going to use it like I'm using it, I would recommend putting the amethyst in your room where you sleep, because that's one of the times that I can really connect with that and sort of um, immerse myself in the energy and help settle it through my systems. Sort of soak it in, I guess. So yeah, there's the amethyst crystal web project redo is the one I would follow for if you haven't done it before, and it has the instructions on it. And like I said, I'm going to do, I think, a video on why we do it that way and what it all means, what the imagery is that goes along with it, not just the steps. But yeah, if you want to create your own pocket world, feel free. But this one apparently is already created, so we can just sort of walk into it and become a part of it and keep our spiritual selves alive and well during our traumatizing lives. Jono says, I hear moldavite is very expensive and clear quartz is just as strong, but Siofra is a crystal expert. It's one of her things, like wands. Thank you. but I agree. Carla says, I wear a Moldavite ring. It subtly packs a punch. I've noticed I need to be much more mindful with my thoughts and words. Ha! Teresa says, Carla, I heard you do have to be careful wearing it. Glad you confirmed this. Gabrielle says, I saw the craziest orb shapeshifting and posted it on TikTok. I got nervous because it got a lot of views. There were a lot of fundy religious reactions, but I have a filter that hides most of them. Well, good. We had another fundy come on to our YouTube channel this past week, but they were very short. They only had a single sentence. So they're not as verbose as they used to be. And in the beginning, we were getting like, 3-page papers. It was quite remarkable. And so, of course, I hid the channel from them because why would they need to watch my stuff? If it's offensive to them, that's fine. They don't have to be a part of our community. And I don't need to let them watch it because I'm looking after their spiritual development. I don't want them to be uncomfortable, right?
Works for me.
Works for me. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why we have the filters on the YouTube channel. I have to approve every comment, period. And that way we don't end up with weird conversations between people and arguments and things that are like useless and pointless and don't have hurt feelings for no good reason, because really we're here for a specific purpose and focus. So I don't want to like distract from that. Gabrielle says, made me nervous because I could feel the anger and unease from some people. The beings are positive, but people tend to fear monger. I don't like it. I don't blame you. Teresa says, was their single sentence, you are going to hell? Well, a little longer than that. It was more like, this is against all the teachings of
Or
Jesus or
the
something like
ones I
that.
like are, you know, this is witchcraft. You're
That
going
was
to
my
hell.
that was
Yeah.
my favorite one. Do you know what you're doing is witchcraft? Yeah, no, I did not know that. I am so uneducated. I can't tell what I'm doing. I'm just sort of following along someone else's playbook. Nothing to do with me, right? Carla says, speaking of guardians of the land, I think part of the reason this town is so dark has to do with all the water. We sit on top of it somehow. I was thinking of planting 4 trees on the outskirts. Interesting idea. And you could put some crystals under the trees too that could help. We had that fantasy one year where we were going to charge up 4 large crystals and put them at the 4 corners of our area to try and, help the energy. It didn't manifest itself. I think the crystal web is a better idea in our
Yeah.
case because then we're not limited just to here.
Well,
But
not limited to just our energy, because I mean,
exactly.
we only have so much we can work with. If lots of
Right.
people get together, that create a nice egregore of energy.
Absolutely. Uh, Gabrielle says, so I have mixed feelings about sharing what I'm experiencing. Understandable. And that's the thing is that when we make ourselves vulnerable, there's always that risk, especially in this climate where apparently people think that their opinions not only matter, but should be spoken out loud. In which, most of them, I pretty much don't care about anyone else's opinions when it comes down to it. Because it's their life and whatever their opinions are on them, not on me. But yeah, you have to get to that point where it works. Carla says north, south, east, west with their designated purpose as guardians, divine masculine to balance the divine feminine. Ah, yes, the 4 trees. Gabrielle says Pocket World sounds wonderful. I highly recommend it. At least it's good for me. Jen says, Shifra, where do you learn the practical things that you do, like the bath? Is it intuitive, or did you learn them from books like Barton or Starhawk? Well, that I just, as the evolution of learning about using the elemental pentagrams and so forth evolved, and my understanding what that meant, it just became a natural step. I didn't actually take it from a book or anything. I just decided one day. I started off just with the water crystal I had. I had an aquamarine, and that was the beginning. I just started off with that and cast the water element and charged that up and add Epsom salt, which is earth, to the water. And then one day when I was taking my bath, I just thought, well, why don't I just do all of them? And so I start off with the air, and I cast the air in. I place it around. I have like around my plug. I put all 5 crystals around my plug in their proper positions, as if they were the pentagram or pentacle, and then I have it there charging up the water, and then I soak in it and so forth. And then before I let out the water, I go and do the opposite. I start with the spirit and open that up and go along with all the other and take out each crystal one at a time and place it on a washcloth on the side of the tub. And so when I get all of them out, then I just pick up the plug and visualize all that energy going down through the water and out into the earth, and leaving me behind and just not having any residue left. And so they're there next to, on the bathtub, on the side of the bathtub. So whenever I take a bath, I just use them. So it was kind of interesting evolution, I guess. And it just sort of happened. It was just one step led to another. And this is the step. So I have small versions of each stone. I have a natural citrine. I have a ruby matrix stone for the fire. I have an aquamarine for the water. I have a stone that the mole people, we call them, the moles brought up out of my yard and put up and placed. It's like a quartz type crystal, um, round stone on top of our lawn. So we took that as a gift from the earth element directly. And then I have a spirit amethyst that I use for, the spirit. So I just put them all there and I place them ritually, and I add, of course, the Epsom salts as well. So yeah, and I've over the years practiced doing things with water and washing and stuff regularly, because that's one of the things as a massage therapist. In between clients, you have to wash your hands, and focusing on the water, taking their energy out and so forth. And this is just sort of an evolution of that, from that kind of thing to me doing it for
Yeah,
myself.
to make a really short explanation of it, as you start to understand how all the basic principles work, you don't need to use any previously written spells or words or anything, because you understand how to use the energies and forces. You can just do it directly
Yeah,
if you want. Of course, you can also turn those into rituals, and then that makes it all that much powerful by repeating the same action, or whatever you're doing over and over again makes it that much more powerful. But once you understand it, you can dispense with requiring any of those things. Then you can pick and choose them, from written books and things as you desire, if you as long as you understand what's going on underneath.
right. I
Get the
actually took those
basics.
stones with us when we travel, so that I had them with me. They
Yeah,
fit in a
you know,
nice little pouch because they're pretty small
yeah, get the
stones.
understanding. Don't just get the knowledge of this ritual or that ritual, but get the understanding of how it works. Then you just make up your own, and as long as they're following the universal uh, laws of the universe, just like the laws of physics, and with physical matter, the laws of physics apply, and you can't get around it. Same thing with magical circumstances and stuff, or mystical. Those, they all have laws that have to be adhered to. But yeah,
Yeah.
once you get it, then you can do it yourself.
Teresa says, I loved your idea of dropping charged amethyst chips inside amethyst caves. I wonder how many people on this channel have access to an amethyst mine. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Gabrielle says, exactly. Some people just like to be negative Nellies. And yep, that's how I have it on my TikTok. People are free to discuss and feel how they feel, but when they try to graffiti all over my page with scripture, I created a King James English filter. Oh, that's nice. Jen says, I have Moldavite. The energy is definitely spacey. Darwinite and Libyan desert glass are similar, but a little gentler in their approach, if that makes sense. Moldavite is a bit more brutal. Gaga says, why are some people born with spiritual gifts and others aren't? I like seeing spirits or healing. Is it from spiritual work from their past life? Yes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Mostly, yes.
Mostly, yeah.
I think that that's the case. Certainly with myself, because of remembering some past lives from the time I was little. I know for sure that I brought a bunch of stuff with me. Um, and and I think that yeah, that is definitely the case. Is so it doesn't matter like when you start, what life you start in as far as it goes, because everyone has to start somewhere. So just because someone like me started way back when doesn't mean that someone who's just starting out is lesser than. It's just a matter of where they are in the experience and understanding of all of those things. And I think that the people that are born with spiritual gifts, we have different challenges that we have to meet, like learning how what boundaries are, how to discern between things. A lot of times there's a lot of confusion as to what's real, what's not real, and how to control it, and that kind of stuff certainly has been one of my challenges, and learning how to ground and everything else. So everyone starts from a different position, but we all end up eventually in the same place. At least I think so. Jen says, I actually really love the Darwinite. It's like a much gentler Moldavite and it's not as expensive. There is a seller on eBay that sends it directly from Australia. I got something like 15 pieces of Darwinite for like $65 with shipping. Cool. Barry Sanderson says, thank you for sharing your insights. Any experience with sardonyx and red jasper? Well, I worked with the jasper. Sardonyx is like a marble kind of a thing, and I haven't really done much with it. I have some pieces of it. I like the stripes of it, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, but I haven't specifically worked with it, you know, as a crystal. Jasper, red jasper, and bloodstone and stuff like that I've worked with. I think the jaspers are very earth-like, very earthy. They've got a lot of connection to the earth element and so forth. And I think when we were doing our trip, when we were finding like different limb cast and what those what the balls that blew out of the volcano,
Thunder eggs.
thunder eggs, yeah, some of them had jasper in them.
Yeah, that was like the most common
Was the red jasper.
for the ones found in Oregon.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean that's the thing is like everyone's going to have affinities for certain stones and have access to certain stones and so forth and whatnot. And how about moss agate? Yes, I've worked with moss agate. I like that very much. It seems very gentle, and I feel like moss agate is something that's connected to the earth spirits, like the fairy folk in particular. I don't know if that's true or not. Just sort of pulling that out of my head because it's been a while. I think I have some pieces of it somewhere. And I've certainly had it in the past. Jen says, "Oh, Carla, I never thought about the water, but that makes so much sense. How water amplifies energies." Gabrielle says that makes a lot of sense. I started talking to the elements directly and asking them to help me.
And that's actually a fine approach because there are going to be actual heads of the elementals and other elemental beings that will potentially help you if you approach them properly and such. So you could get some help from that
Yeah.
quarter if they're friendly towards you.
Sometimes they volunteer. I mean, like the undines, the water spirits teaching me how to swim.
Obviously, don't abuse water animals if you want to get in touch with the undines and things. Same
Right.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Don't be cruel and mean to animals of any kind.
Well, if they dwell in the water, especially if you're trying to get in contact with water.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
yeah.
Barry says, that is so crazy you say that. I am extremely fascinated with the Fae folk, and I have been very drawn to moss agate. No, not sure if that's a coincidence, but a cool one. Sounds like a coincidence or a synchronicity to me. And maybe that's how I picked it up. It's like, yeah. There are some wonderful agates. We have the blue lace agate, which is becoming more and more rare. I use that for my water wand, and it seems to work really well for that. I didn't have one for the water in my bath, though. I ended up with an aquamarine that I picked up. And it was interesting because when Ian's sister came the first time she arrived here and was in our house, the first thing she did was take my piece of aquamarine and throw it in the garbage. And I noticed immediately that it was missing and picked it up out of the garbage. So I thought that was bizarre that she was trying to get rid of it. Um, but I also thought it was interesting that I could tell as soon as I walked into the bathroom that something was wrong. And I immediately found it. So, yeah, you can make a strong connection to the spirit that inhabits the stone. That's sort of the I'm doing a class tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock my time on working with crystals that will talk about a lot of those things and charging them up and picking the right crystals and trying to figure out what you work with and so forth and what they are and what they mean and whatnot. So that'll be on a Zoom class. So if you're actually interested, you can send me an email like after the show, the Siofra's Magic Alcove at gmail.com, and you can sign up for the class and I can send you a link to it so you can join and we can talk more about it. Jen says, thank you so much for the information, Siofra, you and Ian. You are such a treasure of information and I appreciate you both so much.
Oh, thank you.
We're glad that we're helpful. I mean, that's sort of the whole point in my mind. Carla says, I think sometimes there can be too much negative or positive energy in a place, Jen. The water generally carries a negative charge, and too much can sometimes cause illness. Native Americans used to balance things out with mounds. Nobody's letting me build mounds, but trees, I think I could manage that. Yeah, and running water, living on top of running water is very disruptive to the human body. So if you know where the streams underground are, that can give you clues too. Because that has been, I've I've discovered that that is a problem in houses where people are getting sick all the time. Sometimes it's because they're on top of this moving water, which creates this sort of magnetic energy flow through the building that it's under. And if they're crossed, then that's even worse. Cross streams is like really disruptive to humans' energy fields and whatnot. So, yeah, it's interesting. Teresa says, I so appreciate that you're not pretentious. Often people who have been around the craft for a while start putting on airs. It really ruins things for me. Well, people who need to put on airs don't actually know as much as they pretend to, in my opinion. I was actually talking about that earlier today. It's like if you really know what you're doing, you don't need to be pretentious because you just know what you're doing. And generally speaking, the people that need to do that are trying to feed their ego and convince themselves at the same time
Yes,
that they actually know more than they do.
and what I run into oftentimes is basically the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people know a little bit and they think they know everything. The problem comes when they start chastising other people for doing things that are not wrong, and it almost always happens.
Yeah, I do it this way, and it's the only way it can be done.
Yeah, because they know it all, you know. So you have to watch out for that
Well, I
because,
know, and it's really rampant because,
yeah,
like, someone wrote in on the wands thing that they were worried that I would yell at them because they cut a live piece of wood.
yeah.
And I said I would never because that's how I make my wands. It's like there's not one way to do anything.
Well, yeah, you know, again, it comes from that understanding. Understand the principles underneath it, then you can decide and you can tell all those types of people to go busy themselves with whatever they're interested in and leave you alone because, yeah.
So Grateful Owl says, I know some Inuit people do ceremonies with a baby born into a family with a healer. They pass down some of their abilities to the baby. Their belief in spiritual energy is interesting. Well, yeah, there is a historical basis for being able to pass on that line of knowledge and information through families.
Well, yeah, and especially if you know how to do it, you know that there are techniques and things. Barton even gives some techniques in, well, especially in his third book, but how you can impregnate the semen or the eggs to start with certain qualities that you want to have the baby have when he's born. And so you can prepare yourself in such a way to try and give the baby the best opportunity that way by doing some magical rituals and stuff.
So Carla says, that's this entire town, but I'll gather the information about the streams. Gabrielle says, I was born like this, but hid who I was from myself because it wasn't safe in my home growing up. So when I had my awakening in 2023 and all the spiritual memories came back from childhood, and I realized they have Fae, that the Fae have always been around me. Yeah. Well, I mean, society and where you're born and, safety, your need for safety will often do that for a lot of us. And I tried to stamp down, you know, block my abilities. When I went into puberty, I didn't have much of a chance because it was so strong and I kept having premonitions, and some of them were about my family, so I needed to tell them what was going on. But yeah, I know a lot of us actually attempt to do that to try and fit in, especially when you're younger because you don't know exactly what's going on yet and you're trying to figure things out. Jesus says, or they feel they are in the special ones club. Oh, yeah, definitely. That would be the ego part. Grateful Alice says, hungry, hungry egos. Yes, egos. Carla says, found out, I've just found this out because of a parking garage they're wanting to build downtown. It'll cost millions because of how we're situated. Ha! Jono says, I've been living on water for about 20 years now in different places. I'm not going to blame my mental health on the water. That's on me, but I swear that I sure as hell can feel it. Yeah, and that's the reason, that's how, water witching works. Because there's an actual energy that's coming off of the water that the person who's holding on to the branches or, the tubes or whatever it is that they're using can sense through their body because it affects the human energy field that then affects the movement of the switch. So Carla says, Jano, you can feel it for sure. Yeah, and it's everyone's got challenges they have to figure out how to meet. So, I don't envy anyone's challenges. I don't envy my own either. It's just they are what they are. Life is like that, and magic helps you to navigate things slightly differently, but it doesn't change everyone and everything around you because there's still all those natural forces in play, and um,
Yeah, they can be hard to overcome, especially things that are upheld by the beliefs and things of hundreds and thousands of people.
entropy.
Yeah.
Ah, but yes, Teresa says, I find that I need to live near water. If I don't, I start to feel like I'm drying up inside. Yeah, water can be very cleansing to be by. There's no doubt about it. And it has different oxygen levels around it, like being underneath trees, too. It's like if you go into a nice forest, you immediately start breathing different because there's actually more oxygen under the trees than there is outside of the forest. So, it's like the ionizing shift in the particles and so forth from water would be similar. Gabrielle says, so even though I probably have some prior life experiences, I still have to relearn or wake up those things. It's just hard trying to put myself together. It's weird feeling a mystery to myself. I feel afraid of me. I'm sorry. You shouldn't be afraid of you. You are not anything to be afraid of. Carla says, don't be scared of you. You're golden. Yeah, I say the same. It's we're afraid of the unknown, so you don't know yourself. Once you know yourself, you don't need to be afraid of you, right? Is that how it works?
Kind of.
Kind of.
Kind of.
I certainly remember having a lot of confusion about who the heck I was and why I knew things. And people were always telling me to shut my mouth because I was too free with my information. I should stop telling people about it. And I can't. It's just not possible for me to not share, apparently, unless it's like, a crisis and a safety issue, in which case I can lie like anybody else like that, no problem, and to get myself away from a dangerous situation. But other than that, I'm pretty much straightforward and I am what you see. I'm not trying to pretend to be something I'm not. So not being pretentious, I guess, would be that, right? Not pretending. So Carla says, "Yep, that's half the battle, getting to know yourself, so you're not as scared." I used to be certain that I was evil, because everything, all the people around me and all the things that they believe pretty much said that that must be the case. And it's not. I'm not evil. I don't have an evil bone in my body. I've made mistakes, but I'm definitely not evil. And I'm not worried that it's going to rise up its ugly head and take me over because I'm in control. I'm in charge of me. Teresa says, my advice for people generally is own your power, believe in yourself, and refuse to listen to naysayers because they can ruin your life. This is true. Donna says, I don't know if it's because I'm Pisces, but my emotions are just deeper and richer and more intense when I'm close to water. Not a bad thing, but anger is more angry, love is more alive, just deeper. Well, water is about emotions. I mean, the element
Yep.
of water is all about that. So, being better at grounding can help if you find yourself in that kind of a position. Gaga says, do you meditate for your spiritual growth? Do you clear your mind and think of nothing, or do you focus on something? Well, let's see, I've been meditating since I was little, and depends on one's definition of meditation as well. I mean, if meditation is being thoughtful and present and paying attention, then anything I do can be a form of meditation, whether it's walking, doing dishes, cleaning house. When I go to bed at night, I focus on different things. I focus on my my ability to see my own aura or whatever else it is that comes to mind to do. I do the sacred tree meditation fairly regularly. Um, Apparently, I'm having postnasal drip.
Well, there are hundreds and thousands of meditations out there you can do for spirituality, and silence is definitely one of them. If you can achieve that silence, and not just, let's say silence, not just mentally, but okay, be in a sauna with your body still, your emotions need to be silent and still, nothing going on. You're not angry, you're not sad, you're nothing. And then your mind being still. And then you become to see very clearly. And that's when you can really see your perceptions become clarified because a lot of it's taken up by your thinking and such. So if you want to see clearly and spiritually, stopping everything like that will give you a perspective, and you can. It's refreshing. It's kind of like a good sleep should be if you can attain that state for very long, which I can't attain it for very long, but it has its own spiritual benefits, but it's only one of 100,000 ways. I have a book of nothing but 112 spiritual meditations, and each one of them is supposed to be able to get you there 100% if you could do it completely. So there's no lack of those. They're not all. Some of them are focusing on something. Some are like spiritual exercises, almost like doing push-ups. There's so much variety, it's incomprehensible.
I was a life art model for years. I started in Canada, um, and I started doing that because of my history of abuse. I wanted to have a safe environment where nudity wasn't something that was being sexualized, and to learn how to be comfortable in my own body. And I did a lot of meditation when I was holding poses in classes. And down when I lived in Santa Cruz, I was actually a sought after life model because of my ability to hold a position and be extremely still for half an hour to 45 minutes at a time without even twitching. And the way I did it, the meditations that I did to be in that was definitely a stillness meditation that I was doing. And I was trying to be there for the artists that were learning and so forth to help them access their abilities and whatnot and encourage them in what they were doing, which was another reason why they liked having me as a model. So the activity itself is not necessarily the important piece. It's the presence and the that you bring to it. and how you use it and so forth, because I never would have imagined that being a life art model would be a really great form of meditational practice. And it certainly did help me a lot. So, yeah, it's one of those like out of the box kinds of things that just kind of happened. Carla says Pisces are generally empathetic. My moon is in Cancer, same thing. Sun's an earth sign though. And so, like a pissed off empath. Gabrielle says, thanks, guys. Yeah, it's just getting to know myself that's uncomfortable sometimes. Jono says, Cancer is similar to Pisces with water stuff. My fiance and my mom are Cancer sun. Scorpios are again similar, except they hold grudges. Astrology is a weird, interesting thing, super complicated. Tina says, my daughter did that. She found it very challenging and cold. Yeah, I guess it would be cold if they didn't have the temperature up. I did this one uh, when I found out I was working for a photographer. He used extremely large platform Polaroids and did it in such a way that he did multiple exposures, different parts of the Polaroid film. And he was doing this series on like fairies and nature spirits and stuff like that. And he had us out in the middle of the night when it was really cold and foggy out, running from tree to tree and stuff like that. And he was so involved in what he was doing, he was never going to stop. And we'd been going since like, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning. There were three of us, one man and two women. And we finally got together and decided we needed to hide. We went back to our quarters because it was a weekend workshop. So we were sleeping there. And in the middle of the night, we hear him out there yelling our names and trying to find us so he could take more pictures because he had a new idea. That one was interesting. Um, yeah. And I didn't care much for the photography modeling part because you were always on. Like with a drawing, as a drawing model, there's a time when they're drawing and focusing, and then there's a time when they're looking at what they're doing and the teacher's instructing. With a photography group, and I think there were about 10 or 12 or so photographers, everything you did was an opportunity for them to take another picture. So I was like going, one of the photographers did some amazing work with people who were dying from cancer. It was a very emotional spread that he had. And one morning when we got up and went into for breakfast, and he had all of his pieces out there, and I was going through and looking at them, and it I got a really strong emotional reaction, and was crying because I could really feel what he was trying to express. It was amazing pieces. And then before I know it, I had photographers running around taking pictures of me. So that was uncomfortable. Um, yeah, it was interesting. So I didn't care for that part. But the other guy, he's pretty fascinating. Grateful Al says the Pisces I know goes from one extreme to the other. Really tests my temper sometimes. Carla says, laugh my ass off, Shifra. Not laughing at the uncomfortable parts. Yeah, it is it is interesting experience for sure. And it's the organic nature of it. It's like it just sort of happened. And the first time I experienced, I thought, this is actually kind of good for me, I think. And as a massage therapist, I would have people who had gone through some pretty abusive, intense situations come in for massage as an opportunity to find touch that wasn't violent or sexualized. And I was really aware of that as a therapist and so forth. I did some classes with some of the other massage therapists in the community to try to explain to them how that works and things not to say because some of them were pretty stupid about that. But yeah, I mean everything you do can be an opportunity to be more you and to be more in touch with that inner core of who you are and meditate with it and so forth. So yeah, it is interesting because I think we have like this definition of it, like Ian was saying, there's so many different ways to approach that. Tina says, you have so many good stories. I'm glad you found yourself and that you are here. Me too. John says, grateful Al, just my personal experience. When I'm good, I'm great. When I'm bad, I'm awful. I have no idea how the people in my life put up with me, and it sucks. I often watch myself with horror. I'll keep on working on it. That's all we can do, right? Keep on moving on.
Yeah, just don't judge yourself too harshly because as I've found out over the years, I tend to judge my past self from where I'm at now and forget the fact that I was not, at the time I was there, I was not where I am now, and I did not understand a lot of these things. So I tend to judge myself way too harshly. So be careful of that because if you go through life continually improving the way you act and your stuff, you'll start. Well, me, I have a tendency to judge my previous self more and more harshly, and that's not, if you do that, you feel like you're never making progress, you know. Drop that and try and realize too, if you're not that person anymore, that you've gotten past it, you know. Don't let yourself fall into that trench, which is one of my difficulties.
I think a lot of us have that problem
Yeah.
because it's like it's really easy to judge yourself from your current position and say, well, that was really stupid of me or mean or whatever. Great File says, same here, Jono. I struggle with being quick to anger.
Yeah.
Carla says, hearing the way you move through your healing is extremely inspiring and very, very touching. Much love to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess it's more like, you know, you can say, or speaking for myself, I can say like, okay, I was mean in that instance, but that's not me now, and I wouldn't act like that again, and so I can like, you know, let that drop and just try to encourage myself to not have it happen again. And sometimes it takes a while. It may take repetition, a lot of repetition to build up the correct behavior as a habit, but it's doable.
And I think the more you get along this path, the more overview you get.
Yeah.
And that overview is really helpful because then you can see them as not instances that are like all encompassing, all imposing in your face constantly, but just parts of a greater picture. And and that helps you to be better at forgiving who you've been and moving through what's going on. You never know for sure what someone else is going through. It doesn't excuse anyone's obnoxious behavior. That being said, and your boundaries are important, and standing up for yourself is important. But there is a balance in there of not taking things as personally, maybe, and that might help if you don't have to identify with it too much. Because I think often what happens is something reminds us of something else, and and then that energy from the something else that we may not have finished working through, whether it's childhood stuff or another incident or something, adds the energy to the present, and then it gets it bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we're much more likely to, I guess, overreact or react stronger than we would want to for the situation that we're in. And that's all a part of the shadow work and clearing yourself and and so forth, and trying to get some of those triggers out of you. We all have triggers though, so none of us is perfect. Gabrielle says, loving yourself is quite a feat. You just got to be kind to yourself. And Carla says, right, Angel Girl, we are our worst fans. Grateful Owl says, my boyfriend is a Pisces. His extremes does remind me of the fishes that are swimming in opposite directions. Jono says, Luna and I discussed that this morning, judging whoever that person was in the past. I've got to remember that's not me anymore. Shadow work, boundaries, meditation. There's stuff we can do. Yes, positive steps you can take. And Carla says, and we need to be our biggest cheerleaders instead. Absolutely. And, yeah, being alive is challenging. And there's just no getting around that. It is, there's always challenges. And it's about learning and experiencing and growing and becoming and everything else. It's not goal oriented, I don't think. It's more experiential. And the more available we are, the more of us that's available to experience, the more we get out of the experiences that we have. Sounds weird, but true. Anyway, definitely a challenge. Ah, Ian has kinks. Physical kinks. No. Muscle kinks?
Trying to say I'm kinky.
Yeah, I know. I'm going like, this isn't coming out right. Double entendres. No, not needed. Not meant.
Out here being kinky in the background where nobody can see.
Teresa said the hardest thing is when someone wants to judge you as though you were your past self and refuse to see the growth. That's
Yes.
actually very common, especially
Yep.
with family.
Yep.
And
It is.
it's very difficult for people to allow you to change and transform and to become someone new. It's just annoying. Carlos says, I never bought into that fake goal stuff. They keep moving the posts anyway. It's definitely the experience. Teresa says, if he's kinky, so must you be. That's true. Jay Smith is laughing. Jen says, I love and appreciate the community you and Ian have created here. I feel so fortunate to have been led here. We're glad that everybody found their way here. We really are. It certainly is interesting to see how this has evolved from, a sort of a seed of an idea or a notion, not knowing if anybody was open or interested or needed it or anything at all. It's just kind of like a shot in the dark. And here we are. And I think it's wonderful. And I've definitely tried to stick to my guns as far as what this is supposed to be and do my best to resist the temptations that are sometimes tossed in my direction. Gabrielle says, laugh out loud. Jana says, true, Teresa, especially difficult working with family. Teresa says, Jana, that's where it was coming from. Yeah. And, sometimes friends that you haven't seen in a long time, um, they have they have a picture in their head of who you were, and they, unless they're having, contact with you, connection with you, evolving relationship with you kind of thing, if you haven't seen them in a long time, their image of you is a static picture of who you used to be.
Right.
And then when they meet the you, I think this happens with parents a lot too. When they meet the new you, they're trying to superimpose the static picture that they have of you on you. And sometimes you unconsciously respond to that and start acting as if that is who you still are,
Well,
even when you're
yeah,
not, which
it's
is very
because it
annoying.
gets you back into old habits sometimes, speaking for
Yeah.
my own reactions and things that you don't want to have. And I agree. It's incredibly annoying when that happens.
Jen says, you are awesome, Shifra and Ian. Gabrielle says, I was thinking about that the other day, how like no one really knows me and it makes me sad. Well, at least if no one knows you, the things they say about you can't be true. You got to think about that. If they don't know who you are, their opinions don't matter. And I'm sure at some point you'll meet somebody who cares about who you are and gets to know you for who you are. So don't think that that's how things always have to be. Ian is the first person I ever met who actually saw me for me. And that was a gift that is impossible to quantify. Up until then, people saw me as what I could do for them, who I could be for them, any of that stuff. They projected onto me, and I, without knowing it, immediately adapted to their view because of my telepathy and empathy and intuition and so forth. And he insisted on seeing me whether I liked the me or not. He wasn't going to accept anything but the real deal. And that gave me an opportunity to drop the mirror and not have to be the mirror anymore. And I think that that's something that those of us who are extremely empathic really struggle with. So hopefully at some point you'll find somebody like that who sees the real you and not the idea of you in their head. And I think that's, basically
Yeah,
what I had all before, had met people who were just interested in their own projection. And then I would take on the projection. So,
yeah. I mean, well, I really can't comment about that. It's an emotional thing for me, but yeah, I mean, if you're not seeing the anyway,
okay.
yeah,
Jono says, we've changed. I got to this channel near the start. Huge respect to Ian. Ian is an inspiration to me. Good grief, you've come a far way fast. Huge respect, my man. Jen says, you are known, Gabrielle. We are all connected. You can come visit me anytime in the 5D. So yeah, I think it's good that we've developed a community here where we can talk about
I
things.
do too.
and have, genuine conversations, and sometimes vulnerable ones as well. Tina says, "You two are so special." Well, thank you. Um, Gabrielle says, "Yeah, that's what I want, people who are safe enough for me to be me. It's so upsetting how constricted I've been all my life. And when my spiritual awakening happened and I started blossoming, I had people trying to shut me down." Yeah, that's because you make them feel uncomfortable because,
Yep.
on some level they know they should be doing the work too. And, it pushes their buttons of complacency. People like to stay in their complacency. They don't want to have to actually pay attention to what's going on around them. Not all people, obviously, but a lot of people is like they're in their comfort zone. They want to stay there. They don't want to be pushed. And someone that they think they know suddenly becomes different and starts to explore things. It makes them uncomfortable. And the easiest way to stop them is to try and put them back in the box that they're supposed to belong in, according to them. And I've never done well with boxes. When I find out that there's a box that someone's put me in, I do everything I can to break out of that box. I'll just go do some really outrageous, crazy stuff. No, that's not me. I'm more than that. So there. But yeah, it's like it's their discomfort. And I think that's why people kept telling me I should shut up and stop talking.
For people who can't get out of the box or can't think out of the box, it's like Coyote says, it's hard to see the light if you're inside a box.
True.
Real
Gabrielle
thing he
says,
told me
yeah,
one day.
I don't even have to say a word. They just seemed irritated by my presence. Well, and this is a real thing too.
Yeah.
So the more clear you become, the more you clear out yourself, your own thought forms, your larvae that you might have that you're getting rid of, and so forth, and clearing them out of your energy field, the more uncomfortable people who still have those things are going to be around you.
Yeah, the larvae are going to fight to preserve their own. You get so that like larvae can't live in your atmosphere and your aura once you get into a certain point. And people who have those things, those larvae and other people are going to try to get out of your atmosphere, out of your aura as soon as possible.
Yeah,
So they'll start. I've seen people act very bizarre and just go over the top and basically go crazy because of that type of reaction to somebody just being around somebody who's clear and scares their larva to death.
yeah. It's a different way of pushing their buttons.
Yeah, most people who are, do not practice spiritual practices and things have them from thought forms and never doing any purifications and things, and they just kind of build up. It's a real issue that we both seen. We've cleared out
Entire
entire
restaurants.
restaurants and things. Yes.
Just having what we consider a normal conversation. My granddaughter has said, we do not talk like other people. She has confirmed that our conversations are not normal to other people, that we are different from anyone else she's ever known, which is, I guess, a good thing. But it is, we don't think about it because it's just who we are. And we don't necessarily realize the pressure we put some people
It's
under.
being natural instead of putting on a lot of airs and facetious things and impressions you want people to have about you and things like that. And you, people expect to react with other people who are putting on airs and having all those things and wanting to impress you and all that. And if you don't do that, it becomes a real threat to them because they don't know what to think about you. And along those lines, real quick, there's a story by Eckhart Tolle. If you listen to his stuff, he's spiritually evolved, and he rented his. He's got a room he rented out in his house, and the woman who came in, and then she said she couldn't stay there, and she had to leave, and then she finally gave in and said she'd stay just one night, and she ended up staying with him long term. But what happened? She come up and told him later, he was so quiet and so comfortable and easygoing that she thought he was going to come in her bedroom and kill her at night. So she was afraid to stay there with him because he was too nice and easygoing.
And it couldn't
He
be
was
real.
he was non-confrontational because that's the way he is. That's how when he became enlightened, he's just at peace. He doesn't have anger. He doesn't have those conflicts with people. So, you know, part of the problem was when she said she changed her mind, she couldn't stay and she wanted her money back, which she'd already given him the money. He already put it in the bank. He just said okay and gave her money back. And then that really confounded her even more. Then she really freaked out and ended up, she learned and then stayed with him and rented from him for a while. But it was a big problem at first just because he was not the normal violent, combative type of person she'd come to expect out of our society today.
Yeah, and that is a thing.
Yep.
Gabrielle says, even when I was little, I had teachers and random people just coming out of the woodwork to put me down. My abuser even said they were afraid of me and told me to get out of the room once.
Yep, it's those larvae fighting back.
That's what she says. Yep, that's exactly. The larvae are like, ooh, shit, get away.
Yep.
And that's hilarious, the restaurant. Well, we were kind of surprised when that happened because it sort of happened quietly. And then we just looked up and all of a sudden we were alone in the restaurant. We were like, uh-oh, what were we talking about? So we try to be more conscious when we go into public now. And if people start to like get uncomfortable around us, we're going like, maybe we should talk about this at home. Somewhere else, somewhere where people are not going to freak out the public because they really don't need to have that. But yes, Jen says, Siofra, your ability to articulate never ceases to amaze me. You put into words so deftly the things that I experience, think, and feel, but don't have the words for. Well, awesome. I'm sometimes very much struggling to try and find the right words because a lot of it's really hard to put into words. So thank you. Gabrielle says, laugh out loud. Eckhart reminds me of a little peaceful fae. Bless him.
Yeah, he's an interesting example because he didn't practice magic and meditations and all this stuff to become enlightened. He became so profoundly unhappy with himself and his own actions. He was profoundly, profoundly upset with himself, and that's what did it. And I don't recommend the hating yourself approach towards enlightenment, but for him it actually did it. He woke up one day and he just felt peaceful. He was peaceful with all this, and he went riding all over the city on buses just to experience the being peaceful in all these situations because he'd never experienced that before. So it's pretty interesting case of somebody who's just ready for that and it happens.
Jono says, Jen Schieffer is just too good, but be careful of making comparisons with her because I think her spirit has been here close to the start. Schieffer has a 10,000 year head start. Actually, longer than that, but yeah. Sophia says, hello, I did not show up here for quite some time. Well, welcome back. Thank you for being here. We got about 15 minutes or so left, so you can have some time to ask questions if you have them. Yeah, so we're all different.
And that's good. Difference is good.
That's the thing I
My
never have
opinion.
understood
Yeah,
is why people are afraid of people being different because that's nature. Is
it's all
everything is
good. I
different.
mean, I don't know. I think some people would like it, but how many people would want to live in a monotone room, in a monotone house, in a monotone,
We knew one person.
landscape?
She was very weird,
Right.
black and
But yeah,
white with a little splash of red here and
yeah,
there just for color. I was like, oh yuck.
yeah. But I mean, I find that so boring. But then I have that problem with some music too. If it's too, I like, you need repetitive for rhythm, but too repetitive drives me batty.
Gabrielle says that's what I need. Peace. Barry says, what wonderful conversations. Any experience with the Fae as of late? Oh, on the full moon, there was a whole bunch of them in the yard, and they were flying around a lot. I was focused on watching the moon and watching the energy going from um, the trees up to the moon because I find that fascinating that I can see the streams of silver light, so silver blue light going up into the sky and going towards the moon. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're just around, nothing in particular. The pocket world was my most recent like aha moment, and I really liked that. Finding that the pocket worlds are real and that we made one. So, and for um, Sophia, who just got here, the pocket world is the amethyst crystal web, and I'm starting to use it to help my energy and to sort of stay calm and peaceful in troubling times. Sophia says, did you hear about a story that our Earth was a paradise with so fertile soil without any fungus and rot, and then some other species come down here and steal everything from us? No. And as a matter of fact, it's because of the fungus that we have soil in the first place, and that's how soil was made, was mycelium from mushrooms. So I think that that's probably not a true story. I mean, it was mushrooms that created soil in the first place. So, um, and rotting is exactly how things are processed in order to grow and get nutrients out and come back and make new nutrients in the soil and so forth so that other things can grow. It's sort of recycling. It's all about recycling the elements and the nutrients and so forth. So breaking down is a natural part of life and not something that's bad, in my opinion. Um, right now we have all kinds of bunny poop and we're putting it on the garden. So yeah, I think the idea of an ideal world where nothing ever changes or something like that is a some a fantasy reality, and life itself is a lot more visceral and messy than that. But it's not bad. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I embrace the dirt and the mess and the mushrooms. And the mushrooms have got like some amazing healing properties. It's like there are so many mushrooms that can help cure cancer, that can help your mind work better.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's too bad that the scientific exploration of that has been lacking. If they had any idea, like they're starting to now, what beneficial products.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there is some incredible medicinal stuff in there. Gabrielle says, I've heard this universe is a holographic universe, but not literally a computer simulation. We are projecting ourselves into a local experience, but are non local consciousness. I suppose that's one way of looking at it. I mean, the holographic universe model is not that, though. There's actually is a scientific model of the universe as a hologram, but that's not exactly what it means.
Yeah.
Sophia says, so no one stole from us nothing? I don't think so. I mean, I could be wrong about that, considering the fact that, existence is so broad and wide and so forth, but I don't think so. I think that the world evolved the way it is and that it has adapted to the changes and stuff that go around it and that it works. I mean, there's so many things about our ecosystem we don't understand, and we're really good at messing it up by trying to quote unquote improve it and thinking we know how it works. But it is a cooperative network of all these different life forms, different sizes and different types, from viruses and bacteria all the way up to, us and everything in between. So, it's like the earth itself is alive and has consciousness, I believe. The Gaia hypothesis is a real thing, and everything on the earth is a part of her consciousness and awareness and so forth. And any part that we can positively interact with is going to help the whole. So, yeah, I don't really think anyone took anything from us. I think if anything was taken from us, we did it to ourselves, because there are people that aren't connected anymore to the earth. And I think that's lack of connection, the separation between us and the biosphere, and the fact that we should be a part of this glorious planet that we find ourselves on is what causes disharmony and confusion and fear and anxiety and violence and everything else, is because we're sort of adrift outside of reality, the real reality of being on the planet and being here in the earth in this physical reality. Gabrielle says, I hate when people say we're in a computer simulation. It's not good for my disassociation. Yeah. Juanita says, I think they know how powerful of medicines they are, but they can't hide it anymore because people are finding out themselves after the huge spiritual awakening that happened. Um, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Stamets is the reason why we know so much about mushrooms, and he did an incredible job as a uh, amateur mycologist.
Yes.
He basically started the whole science of mycology. So kudos to him for
Yep.
following his intuition. Carlos says, only knowledge, Sophia, as far as being stolen from us. Gabrielle says, this world is real and physical, in my opinion. I agree. Jen says, oh, I don't compare myself to Siofra or anyone here. I am the beginningest beginner and have everything to learn. That's why I appreciate this group so much. You all suffer a newbie like me. We were all newbies once.
Yep.
Gabrielle says, that's so amazing. I'm glad Gaia is sentient. I want to talk to her. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And Jono says, Sophia, you can look into what the Gnostics think about how the human world began. I'm thinking of it because one of the main characters shares your name. I'm a Gnostic, but not like what most people think it is. Yeah, I mean, the world is a complicated place.
Yeah, well, I've got to say that there's definitely some interesting aspects to Gnosticism, no doubt about it. I don't know too much about it, but stuff I've run across, I've got some things. There's a bit about it in like the Manly Hall's book, Secret Teachings of All Ages, and things like
That
that.
big book.
But yeah, I don't know too much about it, but there seems to be some genuine mystical value in a lot of the stuff to me.
Yeah, well,
Some magical value, yeah.
yeah, the whole thing can be very interesting. But I don't think anything was stolen from us.
No,
And I don't think we live in a holographic world or computer simulation. I don't believe that the world is flat. And I definitely don't believe that we're in the Matrix. I don't believe that the past didn't exist just because we can't get pictures of it in particular before photography was invented. I believe dinosaurs are real. I believe in the evolution of species, whatever that might mean, but that there are species that, come from other species and so forth. Um, I think that the Earth is a planet and that it rotates around the sun. And I think that eclipses are real. Um, I think that science is real, and I think that scientists know more than just when eclipses are going to happen, which I find interesting that people don't question when they say we're going to have a lunar eclipse or we're going to have a solar eclipse, but they question everything else that science does. Science is not always right, they're always evolving like everybody else, and we all make mistakes and have bad assumptions and hopefully learn from them and continue to grow and evolve and get more information about the world we live in. So, yeah, and I like astronomy and space, and I like traveling in my mental body all around and looking at stuff and learning new things and experiencing stuff. So, Gabrielle says, laugh out loud. Thanks for covering all the bases. Carla says, same here, Siofra. John says, Ian, the Gnostics focus on a lot on how we ended up in this weird world we're in now. Barden is a better, more beneficial read.
oh, yeah.
Theories are cheap.
My interest just runs to everything though. If it's mystical or magical significance, I read a lot of stuff that I don't want to actually practice just to see what knowledge I can derive from it. I read about Egyptian stuff and Egyptian magic and other types of things, and it's more from just trying to see the universal principles underneath it and understand how it works than it is like actually learning to do Egyptian magic or anything. But I have books on it nonetheless because
Well, it's
it's
interesting.
so useful and interesting. Yeah.
I mean, when I was in the fourth grade and I learned about mythology, it blew my mind open. That people believe different things at different times in history. Now, that's also, though, something to remember. They're beliefs, not necessarily truths. So, it's interesting. Carla says, one of my good friends is the editor in chief of Earth Sky astronomy website. Gabrielle says, I had someone try to tell me that me seeing the UFOs was the government making me hallucinate with technology. And I'm like, who made the people hallucinate and see UFOs in ancient times? And she got mad. I like that.
It's a good answer. They've been seeing
Hey,
for, I know
thousands of years.
well, there are definitely reported sightings, at least in the 1800s, that are very well documented and such, at least in on writing, of course, since you couldn't,
Right.
I don't know when pictures were invented, but you know,
But I like that. Juanita says, I wish they would add energy work and magical teachings to a part of the scientific field. They believe a lot of progress could be made by doing so.
yeah,
Well,
they could, but would it be? I'm not sure that I would like that because while I think they could find out the rules and do it themselves and stuff, um,
being experimented on.
well, the character, the people doing it, I don't know, you know.
That's true.
In a way, I don't know. I'm just not sure if I'm comfortable with that. Not any good logical reason. Just I've seen too many scientists be totally blind,
Oh, that's that too.
and you know,
They're human. They've got their
and
biases and their filters on.
and in fact, I actually know a scientist who was a friend of mine's brother, and he was just absolutely wrong about some little things that I didn't point out because he was looking at it strictly from a scientific point of view, like this should be this way and that should be that way in the electronics. Like you can't, something can't pick up a frequency it wasn't made to receive. That's nice while it's brand new, but component values drift over time and components age. And so in practice, many things pick up frequencies or transmit frequencies they aren't supposed to. So it was really interesting with my perspective as a layman, being able to have a bigger and larger view from this person who's a genuine scientist and who has a PhD in chemistry and what's the other one?
Physics.
Physics. PhD both in chemistry and physics, but that doesn't necessarily lead to understanding real world
Yeah.
life and living and such. It's an intellectual thing. I'm not sure how that got in my head and related to anything we were talking about,
It
but
did somehow.
it did somehow. Yeah.
Okay. Tina says, I have to go early. Love, love, love to you all. Have a great week. Bye, Tina.
Bye.
Gabrielle says she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, did the agencies time travel and make those people hallucinate? And she's, maybe they did, which would make a lot more sense than the
I,
more simple explanation.
I guess what I was actually getting at was that being the scientific point of view is all in your head right now and has nothing to do with the heart whatsoever. The heart is considered unscientific, intuitions and feelings considered unscientific. You got to go by the scientific, step by step rule, and that would be my concern is that if they tried to approach it with just their heads, not their hearts, they might end up with something happening like it's supposed to have happened to the mythical Atlantis back then.
Right. Well, our abilities are more organic
Yeah.
and interconnected and not as easily peeled off, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's my difficulty. I think it could make a great science if they were understanding enough to put the heart aspects, the astral, the heart, the feeling aspects in it, and not, the scientific method is not open to that currently at all.
So Carla says they taught us Greek, Roman mythology in Catholic school, probably so we didn't look like the kooky evangelicals thinking Dionysus partying was somehow the Last Supper. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty lame.
I'm like, seriously, have you not looked at that picture? Jen laughs. Gabrielle says, and I said, well, if you're praying or asking simply brings the devil, then why would anyone pray? Then I said, it don't do nothing. It to attract UFOs, I just go outside and play and pretend I'm dialing a phone in the sky. And she didn't like that. Yeah, people really don't like to be challenged. Juanita says maybe those of us meant to understand how the universe works will, and those who have bad intentions won't. I don't think we'll ever truly understand in human form, though, ever. There's a limited amount we can understand, I think, for sure. Gabrielle says she wanted to scare people on that live and gatekeep interacting with higher beings, and I shut it all down. Oh, good for you. And Jen says, I think too much of medicine and science is based more on profits than on actual understanding, and I think it hampers a lot of knowledge being discovered because it wouldn't be profitable. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, that's certainly true for a modern age. Absolutely.
Witten Susie says, my two pennies. I've had three babies over a 12-year period, and I was surprised how many things I was told first time round had changed second and third. Well, yeah, it does evolve,
Yeah.
and our understanding hopefully changes the right direction. Gabrielle says, the host of the live loved what I had to say. It was hilarious. Well, that's good. Yeah, well, challenging people's assumptions, that's not a bad thing.
It can be a good thing, but it can get you killed. So be careful.
Well,
That's
if you're
my
online, chances are pretty good you're safe.
well.
But still,
Of
yeah.
course, you had somebody come up here like out of the blue and just like come up despite your recommendation of them not coming up to visit
Oh
us.
my God, that's right. That was the guy from Texas. He thought I was supposed to teach him and stuff like that, and he starts talking about coming up here and he wants to like live in our backyard in a tent. And I'm like, we're hitting the rainy season. I don't think this is a good
Not only
idea.
that, but we don't know
And
you.
we don't know you. We're not sure if we really want you living in our backyard in a tent. I have to check with, Ian to see what he thinks about this. And like, and he's going to be here for a year. It's like, what? And he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have a place to live, nothing lined up and everything else. And I'm like, please don't do this. And then he shows up on our doorstep. He drove for 17 hours straight and expected us to like entertain him. He didn't stay very long. Um, he left and went, and then he blocked me on the internet. So that was fine by me because I was just like, what?
Yep, but you just never know.
Yeah, when people don't listen, they really don't listen. They're just like, yeah, I know better. And I'm like, okay. Then he was worried we were going to do something to him. I think that's why he blocked me. It's like, really, we don't have the energy or the time or the interest to do this kind of
I'm
stuff.
kidding. This is a lot of work to harass and be negative to people and try and blast them. Hell, I'd rather use that energy to spend and try and make my own life better than
Well, it's kind
screw
of
up
like that
somebody
meme
else,
that says the beginning witches are like, what can I do to like protect myself? More experienced witches are like, I'm going to hex the Jesus out of all these people. Really experienced witches are, why bother? Karma will take care of it. I don't have to do anything but sit back and watch the show. Get the
Yep,
popcorn, you
yep.
know. And we're in the popcorn stage. It's like, okay, so long as we're not going to be physically hurt in the process.
Yeah. Part of it is knowing, knowing that I have the ability to do something nasty if I wanted to, but then refraining from it. And that's part of that restraint is actually a good way to build up your own personal power is by refraining from doing things like that.
That's true. And if you need them, you can bring them out, like I did with the gang in San Francisco. Scared the living daylights out of those people. They really thought that they were scary and
Yeah, well, that's more of a physical threats are harder to take care of with magical
but I did.
means. But yeah,
Knowing what people's superstitions are helps. It's like I tapped into their superstitious selves and just went all witchy on them, and they were like, "Let's get away from this woman. She's crazy. We don't
yeah,
know what she might do. Ah,
but
witches are
there's
real."
that thing that it's experience. It's not just the point of view because by the time you get that experience in, you've got shields built up, and then it has to be more of a major thing for you to for it to even bother you, And that's part of it is building up your own strength and abilities and confidence and things like that from following the
Well, it looks like we are
practices.
at the end of our show. We've gone over just a wee bit, not by
Okay.
long. But hey, um, so Gabrielle says, or Carla says, probably people are strange. Grateful Alice says, have a great day, everyone. Blessed be. They noticed. Jen says, laugh out loud. Witten says, San Francisco, power up. Carla says, love you guys. Just want to say bye before you sign off. Thank you very much. And I guess we're going to have to sign off now. We could keep this up for days. We get on a roll. That's what my massage therapist clients figured out. Get me talking about something, they got more time on the table. Jono says, thanks for the stream, everyone. Bye, Jono. And Ian says, blessed be everyone. Thanks for your participation. Jen says, have a peaceful week, everyone. Lots of love to you all. And Teresa
Peaceful
says,
week. Everybody have a
hearts and
peaceful week.
hugs, or love and hugs. Hugs
Yep.
and kisses. That's hugs and kisses. Okay. Kisses and hugs. I don't know, whatever they are, yay. Bye, guys.
Okay.
See some of you tomorrow morning at 10.